This example is going to be showing you how we can add in different page elements and different page content. So looking at how we can prepend it to the document body, how we can use the inner HTML to update elements, contents, how we can create an element using the document.createElement method and add some HTML to it and then append it. Also how you can add in and using the adjacent HTML, adjacent element, and adjacent text with the four options of before begin, before end, after begin, and after end. And this is an example of where that content ends up on the page. There are several ways to create page elements with JavaScript. So we're going to be using the document.createElement method, which creates a new element with a specified tag. For example, the following code is going to create a brand new page element. So let's go ahead and open up the JavaScript. And this is going to be the element that we're creating. So set it up as a variable so that we can reference it within the JavaScript code. And using the document create element. And then within the method, the parameters need to specify what type of element that we're creating. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a div. So that just simply creates a div. We can see it within the DevTools console. So that's a div. It's nowhere on the page yet because we haven't added it to the page. We can also select a page element that's existing. So that's one way that we can create the element. And then what we need to do is we need to append it somewhere. So we're going to select we're going to actually append it to the body. And the way that we can do that is we're going to take the document and using the append method, then we can append the page element to the body. And right now there's no content within the page element. So let's add in some text content. And then here we can see my new element. And then save that. So there's our new element added to the page. When we go into the HTML, we see that we've got the new page element. It's been appended, so that means that it adds it to the bottom. If we use the prepend, we can add it to the top. So it's going to be adding it, prepending it to the top, and actually without the A. So just save that, and there's the new element that we created. So there's also, we can select an existing page element, and we can do it like this, where we're going to select the element with a class of output. And using a document and any of the selectors, so in this case just use query selector, select the element with a class of output. So that will allow us to select the output element. And then within the output element, we can add and update some HTML in there. So adding to the existing content, so we do a plus equal sign. So this will add to the existing content. And here we can create a div and then type some content, whatever we want to type in there. So that's going to be another way that we can use in order to create page elements. So there's the hello world, and now within output, we have a div with hello world. So it depends on how you want to access the content. If you're creating the element using the DOM-createElement method, that gives you a way to add and update the element, so you can always reference that element object. You don't need to make another selection of it. In the other case where we're using the inner HTML, that's an inner HTML property, is to add HTML content to an existing element. So in this case, we have our existing element. The content that we're adding is the inner HTML, and it's going to add in the new div into that inner HTML of the container. So we select the container, which is output, and we add that in. You can also use the appendChild method to append and add it to an existing page element. And this adds a new element as a child to the existing div of any div that we've already selected. So we've got the output element selected there. And we're going to create our new element. And this can be element 2. We'll create a new element. And then using the document create element, create a div, or we can create an h2 tag. And then that h2 tag, we're going to add it into the output area. So first of all, let's add in some content into the element. We can say the inner HTML or inner text, and just add in my name there. And then what we want to do is we want to take the output and appendChild method and append the element to that main parent. So there's our append, and we've added that new element in. And the difference between append and appendChild is that this is actually going to have a callback where it's going to return back an element object. So whatever element that we've added in, it's going to return that back. So if you do need that, you can use the appendChild. If we do just the append, let's do another one. We'll create another element. And for this one, we'll just do the append. And instead of appendChild, and let's update these so that they're unique variable names. And do this as L2. And save it. So that returns back undefined. That's the difference between appendChild and append. So if you do need that value, then you can use the appendChild. If you're just adding it to the page, as we were doing over here, you don't need the callback of the element object, then you can just use the append or the prepend, and either one of them won't return back. So there's also insertAdjacentHTML method to insert HTML content to a specific position relative to the existing element. So for example, we want to add in a new paragraph into an existing div element. So let's do that, where we'll select that element, and this will be element number 4, where we're actually going to add let's add in some content into the output area. So we'll add some additional content in there first, and we'll just use the output container for this. So we've got some content in there, so saved, and there's our content that we're going for, and that's within the output element. In order to see the output, let's go ahead and we're going to add a border style to it. So this way we can see where the element boundaries are. So all of these were added into the main element. So we're going to insert adjacent. So we go ahead and insert adjacent HTML. So that gives us an option to insert adjacent HTML. And then we need to select the position where we're inserting it. So let's, we have 4 options. We can after begin, after end, before begin. So we're going to select before begin. In this second element parameter is expecting HTML. So let's add in some HTML. And I'll show you some of the other options that we have. So that's inserting the HTML before the paragraph output begins. When we go into the HTML of the element, we see that the paragraph has been added, insert adjacent HTML before the HTML output area. Let's try a few other ones where we can just copy this. And this is going to be the para 2. And let's update this to, instead of before begin, do a before end. Save that. So that adds in the para before the element ends. And then there's the 2 other ones as well that we can try out and do. So there's after. So our options are after begin, and then we have after end. So those are the 4 options where you can add in elements, and let's update these to 3 and 4 so we can see where they end up on the page. So there's the outside of the output element, before it and afterwards, and then there's the 2 that are inside, before it and after it. There's also other options for the output. So for insert adjacent element, so this is going to be expecting an element, and the same way as we saw this, let's do a before begin, and it's expecting an element, so we need to create an element, and I'll just create the element before we insert it in, and this can be element 4, and it'll be an H3, and then element 4, and set the text content, and I'll use my name there again, and this should be L4, so save that. So there's the one that we've just inserted. So again, insert before, and there's also an option for text content. So if you simply want to just add in some text quickly, you don't have to create an element. You could insert adjacent text. So let's clear that out and insert adjacent text. So this is a really another way to insert some content and save that. So that's our text. So that's our text before the end that we've added into the output element. Different methods in order to add HTML elements or content within your web page.